Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show, it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 7 of Bulgasal, Immortal Souls. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up where the previous episode left off with the conversation about, alright, so Songon, well, it's like, no, I can't be the Bulgasal you thought I was because, yes, my sister had this scar, but I didn't. And obviously for Wall, it's like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. You guys are twins. You definitely were the Bulgasal. So how is it that she has a scar? How does she have the memories, but you don't have any of it? So he actually goes back to her most previous reincarnation, her previous life. And that was the fire 50 years ago. The lady that she treats as like her grandmother, the one who, when she saw Sungon's sister, Sung Yeon, it was like, oh my god, you're my sister reincarnated. We see that 50 years ago, and it was a fire, and it was believed at the time that Sungon's previous reincarnation is the one who ended up setting the fire, killing her and her family. Her sister survived because she was working at the time, but also like her parents and the family that was staying with them. I got super hyped the moment it was revealed that Miss Lee, the seer lady, is actually the daughter. Like the moment they showed off, like she's got a burn on her leg, and it's like, oh, it looks like it's from a fire. I was like, yo, she's the little girl that was staying with them. It's like, so that's how her, because we still had not really gotten into how her and Hawal met each other in this life. So now we have more context to it, like the fire and stuff like that. But it turns out Miss Lee doesn't have memories prior to that fire. Like prior to 6, she lost all those memories. And I guess because in that moment, her powers as kind of a shaman or whatever kicked in, and she remembered him, and she kind of said a prophecy of basically like, none of this would be happening right now if you had basically died when your mom had you. If you had died way back then, none of this would be happening. Nothing would transpire the way it is. A lot of these tragedies are kind of on you. And even in that moment, Hawal was like, wow, did you get dragged into my karma too? Like, he never expected that. So it's like, right, so many people's lives were drawn into all of this. Like, you know, maybe they could have been reincarnated, just had a happy life, but their reincarnations are drawn to him in some shape or form because this all connects back to him. So it's like, right, like, I did this to you. Which obviously he sees her a little bit as a means to an end, but it is a thing of he does, which I thought was interesting, like him and her on such good terms, considering like, right, she was the one that was advocating, kill this kid, he's cursed. It's like, she's the one that kind of like, she bubbled a lot of that hate that the village had towards him. So that's why I was like, oh, I'm surprised that you guys have such an interesting relationship. It seems like other than Songgong's previous reincarnations, no one else that he's kind of come across like in these new even Sehol, like it seems like he hasn't seen her since she died. So, which is interesting. So like all these people, even Detective Quan, his dad, like this seems like this is the first time he's met with them in 600 years, which is interesting. But it is funny that, it's interesting that now is the time where everyone's drawn in. Everyone whose fate and, drawn into his quote-unquote karma is here in this moment. And I think that speaks volumes. That is like now, out of any point in time, at least from what we've seen, and at least the way he acts, like I said, it doesn't seem like he's run into any of them reincarnated over the past 600 years, except for now. All at once bumping into them after all these years, it has to be fate, destiny, But, because I like that Siho tried to get a better understanding of, whether or not to trust Hawal, because she's like, oh, he's a Bulgasal, and I think he's not that bad of a person, but I need to know. So she wanted to use her powers to get inside of Miss Lee's memories. And the thing is, that was really interesting, is she saw some of it, but also the fact is that a young Miss Lee who was growing up at the orphanage ended up looking to her. It's like, someone's looking at these memories. Please, if you can, take them away. These are so painful. And it's like, so it's a byproduct of like, she has powers too, that I guess she just hasn't utilized them in this reality. They're there, but they're so, no, well, I have to take that back, because we know she used them as a 6-year-old, not intentionally. And because that's interesting too, because Siho was like, right, I've never actually on purpose used my powers, so this is the first time. It makes you wonder, she can see people's past and stuff, but could she actually take those memories and that pain from people or not? But because she kind of joked about it with, like, not really joked about it, but she was like, oh, like, there's the whole, Do-yoon and, Seo had that back and forth of like, I've had it rough. It's like, yeah, but I was abducted. It's like, yeah, but I have no family. She's like, I have no family too. My parents died in an accident. Yeah, but you still have your sister. I have no one. And they're trying to like, no, I'm not cleaning that bathroom. I had a rougher life. No, I had a rougher life. And then Miss Lee shut it down being like, no, my parents died. I kind of grew up in an orphanage, kind of had it pretty rough, got married, had a child, sadly, that she miscarried, and the husband she married wasn't a great guy, so it's like, yeah, I kind of had the rougher end of the deal, so I just thought that was kind of like, there was like a morbid, like, humor to that, and both of them be like, no, we'll clean it up together, which is, but, because it's interesting too, because there are moments where it seems like she's kind of like, because from behind, like Seo was like coming to check on her, and she's cleaning up. She's like, oh no, I'm good. Like it seemed like she might have been like crying, maybe. I think that's why Seo was like, are you okay? Or that, or she was kind of in a trance because Do-yoon came to see her, and he was like, whoa, are you okay? She's like, what? It's like, yeah, you were like spacing out for a second. And she's like, oh, never mind. I don't know what that was about. I'm like, is that in some correlation to like her past, like her powers and stuff like that, like her kind of being a shaman type of character, which I love that she asked Seo, was like, are you a shaman? She's like, of course not. I'm like, I guess being a shaman is kind of borderline that charlatan thing of like, oh, shamans are fake. Maybe that's what she was getting at, but I think it's probably meant to be the irony because she herself is kind of a shaman. They never really specified what her whole deal was even back in the day, but I guess she kind of fills the void a little bit of as a shaman, but I thought that was kind of fascinating though. But circling back, I dipped away from this conversation. I think it's a really interesting conversation. Is that to him, Hwal sees a lot of people around him as a means to an end. Like the private investigator he gets involved with, even her, like even Miss Lee. But it's like he has grown to care about her because I do love, and I think it is super adorable and super sweet that she does play a mother role too. Because even to the point, Do-yoon's like, oh, you actually care about me, but she's like, shut up. I know that once Hwal gets back here, he's gonna be mad at some of us. So I'd rather him being mad at both of us rather than just being mad at me. So I thought that was interesting. So, but I think because he was like, right, I'm going to keep you around because you're a means to an end, is what Hwal said to her as a young girl. But I think it is a thing of like, it's also because you've grown attached to her, because he has gone through the trouble of telling, because Seo was like, oh, like he apparently knows me so well. How? And then Miss Lee's like, I have no idea. She does, because despite everything, she started off as a means to an end, but he's actually come to care about her. Because it's also a face, like, he never actually had a mother figure in his life, so I think having her be almost like this mother to him actually feels good. He'll probably never really admit it, but even, like, there's moments in the previous episodes where she was like, all right, I'm going to get stuff for you and stuff like that. And he's just kind of smiling because he likes it. He does like having her around because she was a means to an end, but she is the closest thing he has to family, And the funny thing is, like, so much of his family is reuniting around him, whether it be his ex, his dad, So it is interesting how life works out like that for him. I get in the grand scheme of things, the good and bad come with it, with these reunions, But finally, circling back to what Hwal and Sang-eun were doing, they were asking questions because Sang-eun was, kind of being like, no, there's no way, like, I set the fire and, like, abandoned my family. But he was like, of course you did, because you aren't human. You're that I'm telling you, you're Bulgasal and all this, but she still doesn't believe it. So he wants to stay in the relative area because he's hoping like being around there will jog her memories. It is an interesting thing. Like, no, he's like saying like normal people wouldn't necessarily get their memories back, but there's enough going on here that you yourself would, because you're not just a normal human. But and so it is really sweet. In the middle of the night, she wakes up and sees Hwal sleeping, and then she ends up giving him the cover instead. It's like, despite their issues, like, even she has these softer moments with them. And obviously when he wakes up, he sees her, like, suffering in his sleep, and he's like, I'm relieved. I want you to suffer after everything you did. Like, his hate burns so deep for her. I mean, he's hated her for 600 years, but this is the first time he's ever gotten to really know her, and that's the issue. The fact is that the previous, like, when he met her all those years ago when he was a little boy, he never really got to know her. He just knew her as the woman who protected him, but then he later on knew her as a monster that cursed him, the monster that eventually killed both his son and his wife, and cursed him and made him what he is. So obviously, as we're progressing, we're learning more and more and more about like the story of what's really going on here. But it doesn't change the fact is like he's had this hatred for so long. But the problem is he's finally got to know her, because every other incarnation she's had is died before he could really get to know her. This is the one version of her. This is the one reincarnation he's gotten to know her personally and get to know her personality and get to see her through a different lens. It's like, it's hard to hate someone when you get to know them so well. It's the problem. But like I said, they're going around trying to figure out what happened 50 years ago. But it turns out the fires didn't just stop then. They've kept going and going and going. And even Hwal being like, okay, but no, like, you've been dead for 50 years, yet the fires kept going. And then he remembers there was a monster. Once again, I'm not going to say these monsters' names. Was it like Gasimpo or something like that? I'm butchering it. I'm sorry. It's a fire monster. So it's like, cool. So this is what's going on here. So he starts thinking like, right, the person who told him years ago that, oh my God, that fire, it was started by this person. He heard it from the shaman's son. So he visited him, and it's like, all right, the guy's got burns on his hand. It seemed like it was really him, but then she doesn't have a reaction around him. She has reaction around all the reincarnated monsters. But then she feels something from the inside, and it's his mom. The son has set up all these drums because the monster doesn't like drums. So basically, he's been trying to keep his mom at bay. That is kind of the interesting thing. Despite her being this monster, she is still your mom. So you don't want to kill her. So you're just trying to you're trying to make sure she doesn't kill anyone else. So he's like, right. He heard the stories about Songon going around asking about the fire 50 years ago and knowing who she is. It's like, right, if I can kill this woman that my mom wants so badly, it'll be her final wish. She'll never be around anymore to cause more fires. Even probably worried if she dies, her evil spirit will still maintain here and kill. So he thought right, even if I had to kill a building full of people, as long as I kill her in the process, Songon, then it's all worth it, Because he's the one that's kind of had it. Because the monster talked about, right, his father kept eyes on me, which is so interesting to know, right. So far, you're the first monster to have kids, interestingly enough. The others just seem like loners. But she's the first one to actually end up having kids because they are living as humans. It's not until something triggers inside of them to make the monster. But it seems like, yeah, she's the one that set the fire all those years ago because Darkhold convinced her, oh, no, that woman's in there. Kill her. But obviously he's the one that ended up getting the kill. So luckily Hwal went off and dealt with the son to try and stop the fire. And I like that. He tried to stop Songon. I was like, no, you're going to stay here until we figure it out. But she's like, no, don't talk like a monster. She's like, the fact is, I ran away all those years ago. I'm not about to make that mistake again. Other people aren't going to die because of me. All those people in that hotel or whatever, they're not going to die just because the guy's trying to kill me. It's like, no, we're not going to let that happen again. Luckily, Hwal got there in time. I hope that lady I think she's not dead. Hopefully she wasn't dead. They didn't really cover that, but I think it's probably he probably just knocked her out with a fire extinguisher or something. I was like, that's brutal. But yeah, that place was busy and he was willing to kill everyone because it's right, few deaths for the greater purpose of stopping my mom from killing people. Because once again, I think in his mind, even her spirit would still haunt the place and probably set more fires, so. But back with the monster, her and Songon talk, and I thought it was interesting because she's like, oh, you're like me. You don't actually feel human emotions, so it's and she's like, right, I was there when Darkhold killed you 50 years ago, but I saw something interesting, and that interesting thing is they're tied together. Now, I guess that feeds into why Darkhold or Yote, once again, I'm not 100% sure how to properly pronounce it. Is it Yote or is it do you not say the E and just say Ote? Whatever the case may be, it's oh, you guys are connected. There had to be a situation where Songon in the past fused them together to make him suffer. So as long as we're connected, when I feel pain, so do you. So when he stabbed her 50 years ago, he's the one that started bleeding, as if he got stabbed too. So, because he's also at one point, when he attacked her, was it episode 4? He's the one that started bleeding. He's like, what's going on? And start bleeding from his wound because they are connected. He can't kill her anymore now. That's why he needs Wall to do it in the first place. But my thought is okay, so currently where things are presented as, must be a thing of their lives are connected. And as long as until he kills her and destroys her soul so that she can't reincarnate anymore, he'll have to keep going and going, and so that every time like some monster kills her, sometime like anytime she's in pain or whatever, he has to feel it. So her living is a constant nightmare for him, because he even talks about it later on, which we'll talk about his side of things soon enough. But it is a thing of he's had a hard life because his life is constantly connected to hers. Any pain she feels is pain he feels. Obviously, the number one question being, well, how did that happen? Why did that happen? Is that the full extent of, like, does he simply want to kill her because the moment he kills her is like, I get to live the rest of my immortal life doing whatever I want to, never feeling this pain? Because is he in constant pain because of her very existence? Or is it that it's just like, right, every time you die, I feel it, and I'm tired of being tied to you? You know, plus they probably have their own complicated history on top of that, because whatever, like, tied them together, their history, like whatever bad blood between them, is probably what pushed her to probably create the circumstances where they are connected. Just like she kind of did a similar thing to Hawal. Granted, that's different, you know, but because we know he's older. Well, because we actually don't know how old she is. Like, obviously, we know she was a Bulgasal for like over 600 years ago, but like, obviously, he's like he's even older than all of that. So we still don't know the circumstances around that. I've thrown out my theories that maybe like the reason why Sungyeon and as well as Sungon are so different is because Sungon is the reincarnation of someone else. She's getting the memories and stuff like that, but maybe Sungyeon is the only one who was actually maybe she's the only one that was actually Bulgasal and not Sungon. I don't know. That was kind of my theory, that maybe they're like two different souls occupying this. I don't know, because there is the one who, because the sister's the one that they both have Hawal's soul, but for whatever reason, Sungyeon's the one who had the memories and everything and the scar, but not her. So it's like maybe she's supposed to represent the human side, like who my thought was like maybe she's who the Bulgasal was before she became a Bulgasal. I don't know. Like, we'll get probably a lot more clarity as we continue going forward. But other than that, but this theory about them being connected did get proven true when that monster literally tried to choke the life out of Songon, and it shows that Yote was affected as well. But luckily, Hawal showed up, and I'm curious when he did that. Like, when he kind of glared at her, was that him using his powers to kind of snuff whatever life was left? Or is it just he stopped her in her tracks? Or was it just a coincidence because she was very old and on the verge of death anyway? So she just happens to die at that moment. And I love that she's like, oh, just give me that woman. He's like, no, I can't. She's mine. So, but now she knows, like, right, her and the other Bulgasal are tied together. It's like, right, if she gets hurt, so does he. So do notice she didn't bother telling Hawal that information, because it's like, right, he already wants to kill me, but he doesn't want her dead. He needs her alive so he can get his soul back. Because if he kills her, he's going to be playing right into what Yote wants, you know? So it's like, no, I'm not going to play into what he wants. I need to get my soul back, make her a Bulgasal so she can live forever with all the terrible things that she's done. That's my revenge. That's how I'll make her suffer. So that's really interesting. But when it was all said and done, we find out Hawal handed the monster's son over to the police, you know, because of the fires and stuff. So he's like, yep, I didn't kill him. And then there's also the situation of, she's like, I'm glad to hear that. And they end up going to where, because the son watched his mom bury Sungon's previous incarnation 50 years ago, and they dig up her body. And obviously for her, she still doesn't really remember much, but she remembers enough to be like, I ran away. She's like, I wanted to deny it, but I did. What kind of person? Someone that isn't human. Like, for her, it's like, now it feels like I am that person you claimed that I was. The fact is, I ran away. I abandoned my family. How could I do that? Why did she do that? I don't understand, you know? And that confusion and that hurt on her face. Like, yeah, he wanted her to suffer, but even he started feeling bad, because it's like, right, not having all these questions, like having so many questions, and the only person who will have answers is her previous incarnation. So she'd have to remember it, because that's the only way she'd ever get answers about why she did what she did, why she left her family, why she abandoned him to save herself. there's probably a lot of context we're missing, but especially considering eventually, well, Hwal knows that Miss Lee's from that house, but he hasn't informed her yet. But eventually those conversations are probably going to happen. Because it's interesting, because of Hwal, Miss Lee already doesn't like Sungam, because it's like, oh, you're the Bulgasal, you're the one that made him the way he is, because she cares about him, so she's obviously going to side with the character that's kind of like her son. But it seems, because also, but yeah, she doesn't have the context of like, right, my family died because of you. Like, eventually those conversations are probably going to end up being had, and that's probably going to lead to some complications. Maybe not. We'll see. I'd actually skipped over it, but I did love the whole, when they were, like, obviously because her ankle was hurting the first time, and she's like, oh, what are you going to do? Give me a rider on your back? And even I was like, oh, isn't he? Was like, why would I do that? That's such a hassle. So he just picks her up over his shoulder and takes off. And I love that she's like, hey, just put me down. It's like, geez. And he was like, you're pretty heavy for a lady. She's like, I've got big bones. That's all that is. Like what the hell is wrong with you, dude? Saying that. I love it. But this time, when the situation comes up again, he gives her a ride on his back, and she's like, oh, okay. And she's trying to get his attention, and he won't say anything. And he's just like, Don Hwal. And she's like, what? Don Hwal. It's my name. Like, that way you can stop saying hey, because it's distracting. And she's kind of smiles, because it's like, right, despite our issues, you saved me, and now you even told me your name. So she wraps her arms around him a little tighter. I was like, it's actually really cute. Once again, I talked about it like in the beginning. I went into this series thinking like, oh, they're star-crossed lovers separated by like, oh, like we were both immortal. Like, I thought it was like a love thing between them. I didn't know it was a mortal enemies type of thing. And now it potentially could turn into a love thing. It's something. And I thought that was actually really sweet and really cute. It's like those moments they have is really interesting. I even love that Miss Lee was saying like, oh yeah, those enemies are getting along pretty well. So there's that. But circling back, there's the old situation with Detective Kwan going with Siho to her examination. Turns out she doesn't have a concussion or anything. She's like, right, is an X-ray going to affect my baby? And then Detective Kwan's like, oh, wait, you're pregnant? He's like, oh, so who's the baby daddy? Like, your boyfriend? It's like, well, yeah, well, X. It's like, oh, X. Did he break up with you? Does he know you're pregnant? It's like, yeah, and he told me to do it on my own, so I did. And he was like, what an asshole. Like, why'd you get with him? She's like, I didn't know he was he's like, you should have been with a good guy. She's like, I didn't know he was a bad guy, but I'm going to handle it going forward. He's like, do you know how tough it is to be a single mom? And then he kind of stops, because like, right, they were raised by their mom alone. He's kind of like, okay, never mind. But yeah, he's just like, I'm sorry, because it's like, right, why? She's like, why are you getting so concerned? Like, you're not married. He's like, yeah, you're right. Because even the doctor was like, hey, like, shouldn't you be having like, if you actually had a child, she'd be about her age and stuff like that. And I love, he's like, shut up, you quack. Like, stop worrying about my situation being what it is. Because it's like, yeah, this is my sister's daughter. It was really cute. Because, yeah, it's like, that is his daughter. Like, he feels something, but he's not quite sure what it is. So, but it is kind of sweet that it's like, oh, like, you're not father and daughter in this world, but, you know, in this reincarnations, but fate brought you together despite that. And it's really cute. Because even Sungun still doesn't know. The only person who knows the truth is Miss Lee, that Siho is a reincarnation of his wife. So, because even Sungun kept being like, why did you, you were concerned about my sister. You're glad to know that she's okay, that she doesn't have a concussion or anything, but also that when she got adopted, you were super, like, worried and stuff like that, but he never gave her an answer. But I thought all that was really sweet. And despite everything, she is appreciative of, you know, Detective Kwan helping out, which he's doing his own thing this episode because he learned the name Iote from Siho, and so he goes to like the private investigator dude. He's like, all right, investigate this. He's like, yeah, where's my client? That guy used to pay me so good. It's like, oh, maybe he found the person he was looking for. And he was like, wait, what? He did? You think so? It's like, yeah, it's a possibility, but it's like, right, I need you to do something for me, but it's going to be personal. So he's looking into Yote because he believes this has to deal with the 15-year-old case that he's Bulgasal and everything. So, but I love that he's like, yeah, there is someone at the police station I can turn to, but he's kind of an asshole, and it's Detective Ham. And so it's like, right, turns to him, and it's like, okay. So the stuff from 15 years ago, it turns out he leaned on a suspect too hard, and that suspect ended up killing himself. It seems like that's what really brought dishonor to like Detective Kwan. But he's like, right, like the fact is, he's trying to figure out like why are we like something went wrong back then. So and then he sees the mayor and he's like, wait, wasn't that guy the prosecutor 15 years ago? It's like, yeah, wait, during that case that you're told to like the drownings cases and stuff like that, you were told like, oh, the suspect killed himself. Was he here a lot? He's like, I didn't see him a lot, but he was here and he was poking around back then too. So Detective Kwan's kind of on the case being like, but Detective Ham tried to stop him. He's like, don't do that. Like, he's like, I've heard very bad things about the mayor, but Detective Kwan's like, I don't care. I'm looking into this. So obviously he finds out about Aote, obviously the mayor coming to visit him, which I also love. They have to wear name tags, and he's like, why, I've been coming here forever. It's just like, yeah, but, and his assistant, she's kind of like, yeah, but he gets confused. He sees so many people. I'm like, yeah, when you've lived that long, I'm sure all the faces blur together. It's like, who are you again? Oh, yeah, because he's probably met the previous mayor and stuff like that, like from years and years and years and years ago. And it's like, all right, you're the current mayor. That's who you are. So he's meeting with all these powerful people. I even love they're like, cool, why are you here in this town? Like, you could go to the capital. I'm assuming they're referencing Seoul. It's like, you could go there and make a killing with your power and position. But he's like, yeah, but I did that in the past. I tried to do stuff in the capital, but all that did is I had to interact with other people and their BS, and I don't want to deal with that. So here I get to run free reign. Like, I don't have to adhere to so many other people. It's mine. This is 100% mine. This place is in the palm of my hands. It seems like he's trying to build something, but it would mean like disrupting a lot of lives and destroying stuff. And he's just like, I don't care. Get the residents out. Do whatever you need to make it possible. But I thought it was interesting because like he talks about like, right, because I am who I am, I have so much knowledge and power over everything to the point, oh yeah, and what about your daughter's drug use, Mr. Mayor? And he's like, my daughter doesn't use drugs. He's like, are you going to sit there and lie to me? He's like, I know everything there is to know because it keeps him in his position because knowledge is power and you don't ever want to be caught up in a situation where you don't know what's what. Which I guess we kind of got caught off guard. The moment he was talking to someone about like, oh, Hwal and Sungan went somewhere despite not liking each other. Okay. And he's like, all right, find out where they went. I was like, that sounded like that was someone on the inside. I was like, is it your boy? Turns out it's your boy Do-yeon. I was like, so what's your connection? It's like, it seems like his connection is somewhat similar to Miss Lee and Hwal. That it's like, right, they met when they were younger. Well, Darkhold met him when he was younger, and apparently like him and his brother. It's like, oh yeah, I've always had an affinity from some of you kids at the orphanage, specifically you and your brother. It's like, yeah, it seems like he's getting better. Like whatever treatment his brother's going through, it seems like Darkhold is the one that's paying for it. And he invites him over. Like it seems like this, it's hard to say whether or not he really cares about Do-yeon or whether Do-yeon is just a means to an end to him. Because the moment Do-yeon was like, wait, you kidnapped Miss Siho? Yeah, she seems like a nice person. I get it. You're going after Sung-eun. She's not the monster I thought you said, who you said she was. But if you say she's a monster, blood-sucking monster, then I believe you. And he's like, okay. So, but he's like, yeah, but the Siho thing. And he was like, and his hand was shaking because I think it's the thing of like, I don't like being told what to do, but he's like, right, I like you, Do-yeon, so I'm not going to kill you for like disrespecting me and not listening to what I'm saying, kind of disagreeing with me. No, this is a you agree with me zone. You don't get to disagree with me. But he's like, yeah, you're right. I won't ever do it again. He was able to control himself, but that's the thing. Is it just because he legitimately does care about Do-yeon, or is it just your means to an end? He feels bad because he's like, oh, I feel like I'm lying to Hwal, but he's like, don't worry. All this is for Hwal's sake, because when it's all said and done, Ayote saying like, right, once Hwal kind of gives up his humanity, gives up in trying to retrieve his soul, he'll be free, he'll be happy, he'll be able to, you say that he's ill-tempered and stuff, he'll be a much happier person afterwards, so. But he's the one that he's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, I knew exactly where they were going. They went to go see some fires about 50 years ago, and that made, Darkhold scared because he knows that she knew his secret, and it's like, right, like, probably, like, if they're there, she'll probably try and use that against me, which she did. Luckily, she died, so, but obviously it just fuels it even more for Darkhold of, like, I need to end this once and for all, this nightmare. I need a wake from it. She has to die as soon as possible. It's the only way I'm ever going to be free. So a lot of stuff went down. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.